it really only takes a few minutes to distract that brain. And in addition to that research I just shared, what's also included in that is the more that we do that, the more productive and efficient we actually are on the task at hand, as opposed to kind of spending hours and hours and hours like trying to complete it because you're just so exhausted.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Andrew O'Brien. Andrew is a life coach and speaker who founded the Mind-Blowing Coach, a business with a sole mission of partnering with individuals and organizations to relieve whatever chronic stress is plaguing them so that they can live life with more meaning, more purpose, more energy, more health, and more joy. Andrew, after years of his own struggles and not knowing how to manage his own stress, put all the pieces of the science puzzle together to optimize his own brain health and ultimately begin to live life without chronic stress. Andrew is now incredibly grateful to be working with his clients through virtual one-on-one life coaching services, individual workshops, and group workshops, and partnering with organizations both in person and virtually that are looking to incorporate impactful health and well-being events throughout presentations, workshops, and classes for their employees that are specifically centered around the topic of stress and stress relief. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Andrew. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you so much for having me, Dwight. It's an honor.
Oh, it's an honor for me too. This is going to be a great conversation. Our pre-conversation's been quite long and good, so I imagine a podcast is going to even be better. So thank you again for investing some of your time for my listeners and viewers to learn how to deal with some of the things that you specialize in, especially in today's society with so much stress going on. It's mismanaged. It leads for people to fall into addictive personality traits, right? Destroys families, makes people end up in the hospital more. It's just, it's really, it's a pandemic even before the pandemic, right?
Mm.
So
I would totally agree with that. I think that if we, what I usually share with people when I'm talking about this topic is if we weren't living during the cave people days, but if we can imagine for a moment that we are living during that time period, and then bring ourselves back to the present moment, just that stark difference in just the information that we are exposed to today compared to folks living back during the cave people times. So different. So different. And just from that, like the brain science perspective, if I can just go there, because it's on my mind right now. Like
sure, go for it.
You know, the amygdalas that we all have, they're there for a reason. They're there to serve us. They're there to protect us. And the folks living in the cave people days, maybe their amygdalas would be triggered if they were hunting and if they were gathering and they came across a wild animal that was a real threat. That's when that amygdala would trigger in real time. And then after that threat subsided, after that threat passed, those people would have an opportunity without without necessarily proactively managing their stress, they would have that opportunity to see and experience that amygdala like shrink back down to its normal size, because there are MRIs that show that if we are continually, if our stress response is actively triggered, that amygdala will actually expand in size. And so I think the point that I'm trying to get across here is that if we think about all of the information, most of it negative, coming our way today, our amygdala does not know the difference between perceived and real threats. So it's constantly scanning. And if it's constantly scanning, and if we're not proactively managing that, our amygdalas are going to stay expanded. And ultimately, to your earlier point, we might very likely make decisions that are not going to be healthy for us in the long term. We're going to see ourselves in that chronic stress state. We're going to see ourselves in that burnout state. And so, yeah, if we're not proactively managing this piece, we're going to get there. It's science.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. Well, most people don't. But before we get into more of that conversation behind the science and ultimately what got you to this point, I'd like to know more about your origin story. I found that the more that we share and are vulnerable with people about our earliest recollections in our lives, into our young teens, into our adulthood, to where we are today, people can connect better when they know that there's some commonality with the person that they're listening to. So can you do me a favor, Andrew? Please share with me your origin story, the key things from your earliest recollections to where you are today. Please and thank you.
Yeah. And I think as it relates to the what I have experienced, like the chronic stress and burnout that I have experienced for many, many years, and the work that I do in connection with that, the earliest thing that I can remember is like two things. I'll kind of like add in other things as well as I go on. But the two first things that I recall that I was experiencing just physiologically and biologically is that I always seemed to be like biting my nails. And my parents tried so many different things to help me stop that, including, putting tape on my fingers, putting like spicy stuff on my fingers, and all these different things to try to help me stop biting the nails. And then the other thing, physiologically, biologically, that was happening to me that you know, I didn't understand, was that I wet my bed for I don't know how old I was when I stopped, but compared to everyone else that I knew growing up, my peers, I was the only one still there. And still remember trying to cover that up, like when I was going to sleepovers and stuff like that, and just making sure that I brought my own sleeping bag and no one was to see it or touch it, like the next morning, and I would wrap it up real quick and be very awkward and embarrassed about all of that. But those from this stress perspective, that young of an age, I remember those two things very vividly.
What circumstances were happening in your life though? Was it behavior around you from your parents, or were you have relatives that lived in a very heightened level of stress and burnout themselves?
Yeah, that's an amazing question, because the answer to that is like not to my knowledge. Like I don't know what was happening in in that way. The only thing that I bring it back to, and the only thing that I connect it back to ultimately is me just always feeling like I was an outsider, and
How
not
old
fitting.
were you? How old were you when this was happening? Do you know?
I would want to say, if I were to guess, I would say the bedwetting ended like junior high school years. So pretty old from that perspective. And the nail biting was a thing that was happening around that same time too. Probably before
Wow.
that, probably later than that too. Um, but it's
So there was no real forces within your personal family life that were causing you to feel this way. There was no external triggers that you can think of. It was just who you were. It was just who Andrew ended up being, and you had to work through it.
I believe so. And who I was and who I am is historically been someone who felt as though that he didn't fit in, didn't belong. And I think a lot of that is connected to me uh, being gay in a predominantly straight society.
Yeah, that is definitely an external force. It adds a puzzle piece in, right, to make more sense of it. Obviously, it shouldn't matter, but in today's world, though it's people think the LGBT community is more accepted, they're not. They're actually feeling even more helpless. I myself am not gay, but I have a cousin of mine that's gay. I have many friends that are gay for over 30 years. I've been very accepting, but I'm a small part of the population that accepts that, right?
Hmm.
That doesn't judge it. They may not verbally say it, but you can tell in their body language, you can tell in their tonality, and it can be a very judgmental thing. So when did you discover that you were gay? Were you, was it before junior high, or what was the root? Because you talk about the fact that you didn't fit in. Well, obviously you must have felt those feelings by that point, but did you know at a younger age and just you didn't know how to express it, or were your parents aware?
Um, Parents were not aware. I let them know later on in my life, and it's it's yeah, I'm trying to 2001 is when I call my coming out day was when I told the parents, and that was later in 2001 December on my birthday. And
We don't have to discuss this if
no, we
it's
told
something that's
yeah, no, we totally can. And I think it's important. I think I don't know is the answer. I don't know, like,
perfect.
did I always know that I was this way? I don't know. I think that,
I only brought up because of the correlation between the nail biting and the bedwetting and stuff.
yeah,
Because I know when I've talked to other people that have had that realization that they were unique over other people, that they looked back and the decisions and choices and things they were going through were directly tied to that because they didn't understand the feelings they were having, or they kind of did, but they seen how their family or other people communicated about that circumstance of being gay, and they felt even more sheltered. So then their anger, their stress, their anxiety flared up. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that they were hiding all of that, and it was coming out in other ways. Maybe not nail biting or bedwetting, but in other ways, right? Maybe they were, you know, chronically depressed, or maybe they were overeating, and I've seen it hurt it all, and it directly tied to that, and that's why I brought that up. It wasn't to make you
yeah,
feel uncomfortable.
yeah. I do not feel uncomfortable. I'm just really trying to like reflect on this in real time and appreciate the questioning and it's really, I believe, a combination of a few different things. One, the lack of example that I had growing up as a gay kid in a primarily straight community. to no fault of anyone's, because like they're not gay, but I think is that lack of example coupled with, I recall a couple of different instances, and this is now connecting back to what I initially said about our amygdalas don't know the difference between real and perceived threat. But I recall a couple times on the media hearing about and seeing gay boys getting killed just for being gay in different communities, not in my community. Uh, and so I think that created some fears of of like inhibiting myself. Like maybe this is not something that I should explore. Maybe this is not something that I should get into. Uh, and that could have translated into to me not um, managing the situation in a way that was ultimately healthy for me.
Well, yeah, because I had somebody on my show here last week and we talked about the fact of acceptance of our everything's labeled as mental problems, but really a lot of it's emotional problems that we don't feel, that we're afraid of getting judged, or they're, how are we going to be treated, or how are people going to interpret who we are by who we really are, and they find out and we're afraid of being judged, so we squash that emotion down.
Mm.
We use meditation, we use so many different things to try to control that emotional state instead of being our true selves and being able to accept who we are as a person. So I can see how that would culminate into challenges like what you were going through. When you came out to your parents, were you having other challenges along the way that became better after you were able to discuss and be open with them about it?
Uh, I will say so with the whole not so what happens in the brain is we get conditioned in a way, and so we do things, and so I think that also the fears that develops for me in exploring who I was, and ultimately loving who I am as a person, it that did not happen overnight. And so I went through a lot of other physiological, biological stress symptoms throughout uh, the majority of my life that were in addition to the bedwetting, that were in addition to the nail biting that I mentioned before. And it's, I think, what a message that I told myself to protect myself was, I have to be a perfectionist. I have to fit in somehow. The only way that I know how to fit in is intellectually. And by that I mean like getting the straight A's in school. So putting a lot of pressure on myself to at least fit in that way, so that people can't figure out
So
who I
you
really am.
Well, and if you didn't feel like you could be accepted on one avenue, maybe you could be accepted, like you said, so now you're got good grades and you're a wizard with school. If somebody did suspect it or it came out, you were hoping that it wouldn't matter because of this was a stronger pull for acceptance or appreciation,
Mm,
feeling welcomed or part of the group, right? I don't even
yeah.
think you have to, I think we go through that whether we're somebody that's gay or not, but somebody gay goes through it so much worse because I've had so
Mm,
many conversations, and I find it very interesting how our brain works and how we internalize stuff and we squash our emotions, we compartmentalize stuff because we all want to be accepted. Now you
mm-hmm,
look at a very marginalized group of people that are gay, whether they're female or male or the transgender community, and feeling acceptance is so hard because, like you said, then you heard about people getting, beaten up or killed or whatever. So now you got all that fear. And then you have conversations with people such as your family that don't understand what it's like to be gay and don't realize that there's simple comments about something or somebody that you respect says a homophobic, or is that how you pronounce it? Say a homophobic comment, and they make it even worse on you because they don't realize that their words are hurtful. It's just like stabbing somebody with a knife. You pull it out, you still got the injury, right? You've said the
Yeah.
words, you've already caused damage. And you may not even realize it in that moment until you later on when you're at that age reacting or acting out, or even as an adult now today, we all act out and react on stuff that could have been something that was said to us the day before, an hour before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so difficult because our brain, like you say, you put it differently than I say. Like you say, real and perceived threat. I tell people the human brain is like a giant computer. It takes data, but it does not know the difference between a truth and a lie. It just does
Mm.
not. We create the truth or the story that our brain
Mhm.
perceives, and that programming, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just to kind of underscore, I do feel blessed in the way that at least after I did tell my parents, like it was still like a lack of example. They didn't know how to talk about it. They didn't know what to do, but there at least there was no harsh treatment towards me in any sort of way.
So
Uh
there was acceptance to the level that they could accept you, right?
yeah,
Which is
absolutely.
good, which is a blessing. It absolutely is. I
Yeah.
remember the first time um, I befriended a person. His name was Mark, and I was in my early 20s, and I was working as a computer consultant. I had a consulting business, and Mark and I became friends. And he didn't share with me for months that he was gay. I knew he was gay. How did I know? It was the way conversations. I watched his body language, and I watched the fact that he was looking at dudes. He wasn't looking at girls, which is I had no problems with that. We became friends, and I didn't have that me issue where it's because when people have an issue with somebody that's part of the LGBT community, it's a them issue. It's not an issue with the other person. They need to get in contact with their inner self and realize, why are you judging somebody, right?
Hmm.
Everybody. I'm God fearing, so everybody to me is a child of God, no matter what they present themselves as or what they disability that they have, if they're born mentally handicapped, or they're born with some sort of disease or a challenge. Everybody's unique. We just got to accept each other as being unique and quit judging and stuff. So that's great to hear, though, that your parents didn't make it difficult on you. Did other people make it difficult on you when that happened? Do you have siblings?
I do have a sibling, and yeah, like truly, m- despite my like literal fears of telling people the first time, the people who I loved and love in my life, I did not have one like negative, disparaging reaction.
That makes me happy. It makes me glad, though, to hear that, because it's already difficult enough what's going on in your brain,
Yeah,
right? And the little voices,
yeah,
right?
because
There.
I keep going back to those media reports that I saw about those other gay boys who were, killed. And the brain will hang on to that until you become aware of it and are ready to kind of do something with it. If you don't want to live with it anymore, you can choose to not live with it anymore. That said, I think that that was a key force in my brain, even amidst like the supportive reactions that I got from everyone who I told about me. Uh, the things that I was telling myself, that's also a key driver here. And that all I think came from me feeling as though that I didn't fit in. I'm gonna get this is my brain talking back then. I'm gonna get killed if I come out as gay. And I better just like hunker down and fit in the best way that I know how to do. And in my community, it was like either being a nerd or being like super athletic in sports. And I know that that wasn't me. So I chose the intellectual route. And I was like, if I didn't get those straight A's through high school, through college, through my grad school, even if I got like an A minus, I would judge myself. And that all led to subsequent physical stress symptoms.
Which led up to where you are with, learning. You had learned the science behind what causes stress and burnout and all that other stuff. So it makes so much more sense. And the reason I say that is I was already intrigued by what you've gone through to get to the point of being somebody that mentors and coaches others and helps them out with, their chronic stress, burnout issues. But now it makes so much more sense. The passion that would drive you to better yourself, learn how to control and deal with that, because you're going to deal with that as being a minority the rest of your life, unfortunately, because we have a bunch of redneck people in our North American continent that need to, have a dose of compassion and empathy instilled in them. Like, here, take this pill. If you have to take it every day the rest of your life, you will learn to accept, not tolerate, but accept others for their unique skills, their abilities. And it should have no bearing whether or not what their sexual orientation is. It should have zero. But I preach this all the time because people are either going to like me for who I am as a supportive person toward the vast, large community, or they're not. And if they're not, then they weren't meant to be part of my tribe. That's the way I look at it. And that's the way you probably live your life too. Either people are going to be for you or they're against you. The ones that are against you aren't part of your tribe, and they live their hamster wheel existence. You live your evolution existence where you're always on the climb to develop, change, and support others. That's why you're on the show. That's why you're on Give a Heck. You give a heck about yourself, right? That's pat yourself on the back. I would. Good for you. If I could, I would, but I'm too far away. I'll give you the virtual pat on the back. But, at the end of the day, let's continue. Is there anything else you'd like to add about that before we continue on with the conversation about chronic stress?
Well, yeah, I think you just mentioned the word compassion and give a heck, and I think that's a huge part of it. I think it's learning how to be kind to yourself, right? Not just hoping that others will be that way. And that's why I do what I do. It's really like uplifting this world. Like that's why I'm in this business. But that's putting that lens on yourself from that self-compassion piece is something that I can't underscore enough, because gay or not, literally I can't say 100% of my clients, but very close to 100% of my clients have negative things to say about themselves. And those all came from somewhere, and those all came from something.
Yeah, learned behavior is brutal.
Right. And so to have your compassion for yourself as you're looking to make some changes in that arena, it's something that I talk about all the time, and it's something that I wanted to, you said the word compassion and triggered my brain, and so I wanted to just like put the lens on ourselves too, to ensure that we
Absolutely.
do have that kindness for ourselves. And it aligns with give a heck, because you told me to pat myself on the back, and I did, and I saw you pat yourself on your back too. So
Well, we
kudos.
have to. You have to, though, brother. Like, honestly, you think about it, life is both a pleasure and it's a curse all at the same time. And we need to continue to have empathy for others, but the number one person we forget is ourselves. Do we love what we see? When we look at ourselves, is the first thing in our brain, does our brain on an intellectual level, when it criticizes you, that's not emotional. Your brain is criticizing you or saying something negative, and how you feel as a person from that is the emotional aspect of it. And we feel, then we get sad, depressed, we react out. We don't know, or pardon me, we act out. We don't necessarily know how to accept it because our brain can be a bully. And we don't know how to stymie that bulliness to accept it so that the emotional response that we have, at least for me, the emotional response I have from my brain is like, shut the hell up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I don't want to hear that. I want, if you can't say anything nice, don't say it at all. We think about that about the external, but we should be telling our brain that, if you can't say something nice, be quiet. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And people, you may think that sounds corny, but self-talk, positive self-talk really does help. Is it the end all be all? No. But it's all the little nuances we can do in life to make it so that we have a purposeful life, right? How to live
Yeah.
life on purpose and not by accident is what Give a Heck's all about, right? To
Mm-hmm.
live a purposeful life in our own realm of the uniqueness of us, our own tribe of people that appreciate us, and quit worrying about what other people think. I know it's tough. I still, even in my 50s, that comes up. I think about, well, what is that? What did I do wrong? That person didn't, I haven't heard from them, or what did I, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's just as simple as they've got their own stuff going on. They don't have time for me right at the moment. And I'm so telling myself, my brain, it's not personal. Shut up. Don't
Mm-hmm.
don't say stuff to me to make it personal so that I feel like garbage. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. We need to put more effort into loving ourselves 100%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having that compassion, right? Because if we can't have compassion for ourselves, how can I have compassion for Andrew for the trials and tribulations he's gone through? How can I have empathy for you if I can't have empathy for myself, right?
100%.
So it's interesting. So one of the biggest things that you talk about chronic stress, you talk about burnout. So many people don't understand really what chronic stress is, let alone what burnout is. And do those two always tie together, Andrew? Or can you have one without the other, or is it always something where it's a combination?
Yeah, fantastic question. And I think we've come to use these terms interchangeably. In my mind, there is a difference. And that difference is so when I talk about chronic stress, I'm talking about if we are feeling just overwhelmed, if we're feeling off, if we're feeling down, overworked, irritable, any of these things, if we're feeling like that for, I don't know, like around 3 months, uh, give or take a few days, that's the stage that I call chronic stress. Uh, Anything beyond that, I would consider like burnout.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Um, and we will all, and that's the thing, right? Like most of my life, I didn't know that I was chronically stressed or burned out. Uh, it was only through my reflection over my life, which was like a culmination of all these different physical stress symptoms. I said, life can't be this. Like life can't be this way. And so I took a hard stop and I said, what's the common factor here? What's the common denominator? And we already went through all that, so I'm not going to go there again. But it's I think my point is that we don't always know in real time that we're going through it. And so I encourage the audience or the listeners to think about, um, do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel overworked? Do you feel like you're in a hamster wheel and you don't know how to get out of it? Do you feel as though that you are living life for other people strictly for other people and you're not living life for yourself? Are you feeling off in any sort of way? Are you feeling down in the dumps, sad? Um, those are all questions that I would throw out there to kind of paint the picture of like, am I going through it? And
Being honest with yourself, though, right? Because so many people, we can evaluate, we can, you know, judge ourselves so harshly. And at the end of the day, being honest with ourselves is difficult because it's tough to want to admit to ourselves our brains being all that chatter and noise, and we have the emotional connection to what's being said in our heads. We can't be honest with ourselves about where we're at a lot of times. I find when I have conversations with people that I know fully well that they're in a heightened state of stress, and it's been for months, like you're talking about, and they just can't seem to shut it off, right? They can't be honest with themselves and admit that there's a challenge and that they need to find something to alleviate, right? Whether it's a first initial baby step, getting coached, mentored through it, or
yeah,
seeking out support from anybody to get past it. You have to be willing to understand that it's okay to admit that you're overwhelmed, that you're overworked, that you're, some tragedy happened in your life, and it might not
mhm,
even be overwhelmed or overwork, but you're overwhelmed because of the loss of somebody close in your life, and you just don't know how to accept it because you've never had that happen before, and then you beat yourself up. Why am I letting this bother me? Well, let's see, you've never had it happen to you before, so
yeah.
relax and don't beat yourself up. Accept the fact that you're a human being and you're flawed and you're wonderful all at the same time, right? And that you feeling that because of your tragedy or whatever circumstances happen in your life, that's okay. Nobody prepared you for that,
Yeah.
and possibly nobody could have prepared you for that. So accept it, don't beat yourself up, move forward.
And that's why I was so attracted to this podcast, because in my view, it's really like normalizing it. What we're doing, we're talking about it. And the more that we normalize and share these kinds of experiences, I think the better off we all are as humans. I mean, at the end of the day, we're like walking nervous systems biologically. Our brain, our central nervous system. That's we're a lot more than that. But fundamentally, we are nervous systems, and if we are not proactively managing the stress response, as I mentioned before, we are likely kind of going to get into this chronic stress slash burnout stage. That's going to all be different for everybody. The different stress symptoms, could be emotional, could be physical. That's all going to be different for everybody. But at the end of the day, negative health outcomes will occur, because what's happening is that to maintain the activated stress response, it's 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 diverting the cells in our bodies from different parts of the organs to support that stress response, um, to keep us activated, right? And like I said, this is a natural thing. This is a biological thing, and ideally, what we want to happen is to have that stress response kind of activate and then kind of go back to homeostasis, activate, go back to homeostasis. But what happens more and more is that we activate and we stay in that activated state, and those cells are being diverted from the other parts of our bodies and organs, and that's contributing to the negative health outcomes we're seeing across primarily like our kinds of countries. And so yeah, this normalizing, talking about what is my stressors, like what's happening in me, um, is such a powerful way, in my view, of conveying A, how biological this is, and B, how much power we have in controlling it and managing it, so that we don't have to get to where I've been for many years of my life. And live life as you introduced me earlier today, with more of that energy, with more of that purpose, that meaning, and that joy.
Well, we all deserve it, right? We all deserve to have people not be judgmental of us, to be, as we talked about, be empathetic, be kind, and just, if you don't like something that somebody represents, it could be a company, it could be a group, it could be an individual, whatever they represent, if it doesn't tickle your fancy, then you have the opportunity to walk out the door and close the door behind you and live your existence and allow that other person to live peacefully in their own existence, regardless of whether or not you agree with it. We become such a polarizing nation in North America, not just North America, Europe, any of the more advanced cultures, with politics, with religion, with schooling, with healthcare. Everybody's got there's no in between anymore, Andrew. It's always,
Mm,
this is right, this is wrong, or you're right, you're wrong. You know what I
mhm,
mean? And then people, the pandemic was phenomenal, how it brought out people's truths that they were hiding, because now all of a sudden they're hiding in their house, putting it on social media, putting it on um, printed media or television. Everybody's got an opinion about how we're supposed to live through the pandemic. Everybody's got an opinion how Andrew should live because he's gay. Everybody's got an opinion how Dwight should live as a single guy with 5 kids, raising him on his own. Everybody had an opinion that I needed a woman to make it better. Everybody had an opinion about the fact, everybody's got something to say, and sometimes they shouldn't say it. You
mm,
live your life in your own little world. I'll live my life in my own little world. Andrew and I can live in each other's worlds, and we can coexist. We can overlap in each other's world because I can empathize and have appreciation for his uniqueness. I don't need to judge him for it. Now, does that mean Andrew and I won't have a conversation and disagree with one another? It'll have nothing to do with the fact that Andrew's gay. I just thought that his opinion on something was ridiculous, or I thought it was really good, right?
mhm.
I'm not thinking, oh my gosh, I got to talk differently to Andrew because he's gay. I'm going to talk to Andrew like I talk to anybody. Right? If
Yeah.
he makes me happy, I'm going to let him know. If he pisses me off, I'm going to let him know. And that's the way life should be. That's how unity and peace happens in our world.
Mhm,
But fighting over politics, religion, quit fighting over all this stuff, or sexual orientation. Like, are you kidding me? If you want to live a certain way, and like I used to, when I was younger, I'm going to use this as an example. I used to really bother me because I used to hear it from my learned behavior from my family. Tattoos are bad, and this and that. So if I seen anybody with a tattoo, what's the first thing I thought as a young person? They're bad.
mm,
They
mhm,
weren't bad, right? And as I got older, I don't have a tattoo myself, but I appreciate people that have them. I ran into a guy at my grandson's uh, jiu-jitsu class in the last couple of days, and I introduced myself. He just seemed like a cool guy. He was sitting beside me. He's got both sleeves done. He's got them on his. I didn't care, and we got into the topic of he brought it up because he wanted to know who I was, and I said, "Oh, you might have seen my daughter here. She's on holidays right now, and help them out, bringing my grandkids, 2 of them to the boys to jiu-jitsu." And he goes, "Your daughter?" Oh, I said, "Yeah, she's pretty blonde. She's got tattoos everywhere." "Oh, yeah, yeah." And he started talking about tattoos and stuff. And I just said, "Yeah, I don't judge you for you having your tattoos. I said, if you had them all covered up and somebody met you and had a conversation, but all of a sudden you pulled your shirt off and they've seen all your tattoos, do they treat you differently?" He says, "Absolutely." Right?
mhm.
They'll treat me differently. And I'm like, "Wow, those are awesome." Or somebody might be going, "Why would you do that to yourself?" Polarizing reactions from people, what at the end of the day, all it should be is, "Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with it or not, cool. That's that gentleman's right. That's my daughter's right to have all those tattoos." And I don't know. I've become more accepting as I get older. And people say, well, old dogs can't learn new tricks. They become, people get more set in their ways. That's because society has told you that's okay for you to get set in your ways. I'm telling you that's BS. Don't be
Mhm.
set in your ways. Continue to evolve and accept others in your circle. Right?
There's power
Sorry.
in acceptance.
Yeah, I'll get off my soapbox again. So, I know myself in my life, I've experienced both chronic stress and burnout because I do know the differences. I never thought about the timeline that you mentioned, but that makes sense. From trying to run my own business while raising my kids as a single dad. Today that is not the case and had to go through, so many character building moments before things got better, right? I honestly did not know what the solution was to my chronic stress. My nights of going to bed, raising 5 kids in quiet desperation would blow your mind. Waking
Mm,
up and putting another, you talked earlier about masks. I put a mask on in the morning and I get up, hi kids, when inside I was dying. The
mm,
stress I was feeling because of having to take care of them. Am I going to be able to get them to this class? How am I going to afford paying for this and the mortgage? How am I going to, be the best version of me so that I don't say the wrong things to 4 daughters and a son, right? As
mhm,
to help them evolve and so I have so much pressure on myself, right? And I understand that chronic stress and I burned myself out. I didn't sleep properly. I was having health issues. But the thing that got me through, and I wanted to talk to you about, for me, the solution to make it to the other side and continue to evolve, it was due to personal development. I got into personal development prior to this all happening in that stress with my kids. But if I didn't have some of the tools from reading books, audio, going to different events to elevate my mindset. And again, back when they were younger, I wasn't 30 years into it. I was like 15 years into it. And
mhm,
I was constantly, if I'd slip away from personally working on myself through personal development, listening to tapes. Yes, I'm dating myself, listening to tapes and then CDs. Now you can stream stuff. I'd find myself slipping backwards, and my brain was giving me and taking control of myself. And yes, indirectly, I was allowing it because the outside circumstances of people telling me, how can you raise kids as a guy? How can you do this? How are they gonna learn anything? Who's gonna tell them about, my daughters, their monthly cycle? Who's gonna get them their stuff? Me. What do you mean you? You're a guy. So what? So society was always labeling me, putting that pressure on me. So I found when I slipped in and out of personal development, my life has gotten worse, right? It's easy to fall backwards. It's not like a habit where it sticks in the brain. Our brain, like you said, doesn't know the difference between reality and non-reality, or like I say, truth and a lie. So um, I want to know what you think about personal development in regards to using that as a tool, one of many tools that are out there in regards to helping people with chronic stress and burnout.
when you say personal development, what what were some of the things that were involved in that category for you?
Um, well, even a simple book of like How to Win Friends and Influence People from Dale
Hmm.
Carnegie, right? Written back in the early 1900s, right?
Yeah.
Amazing book, written by a guy that was a billionaire at the, based on today's dollars, a very intelligent man that literally taught people how to do something as simple as picking up a phone and smiling before you say hello, just to
Mm,
change our body language and change our brain chemistry to shut out that negativity. Oh, who's going to be on the phone? Or like in today's day and age, you look and you can see who it is, and it's going to be kind of a iffy conversation. Instead of answering it hello, you answer it, hi, how's it going? Good to talk to you, Andrew. Set the pace and of how you want the conversation to be, higher energy. So books like that. um Les Brown, one of my most famous people, and that I've loved listening to for 30 years now, and I've had the pleasure of being able to ask him some questions in an interview here last year. And he's, just people like that are always making you think differently, right? And that's how, when I that chronic stress, I'll remember some of the things that Les Brown has taught me indirectly from his books and his CDs and tapes in the
mhm.
past. but if I'm not constantly reminding myself, sometimes those little nuances that help me control and keep myself level emotionally and not feel overwhelmed disappear. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that I have to listen to less all the time, but I'm listening to positive, upbeat people that are saying, it's okay to do this, try this, maybe this can help you, guide you to a better place. Does that make sense? So that's for me,
Yeah.
personal development is learning how to understand who I am, and it's okay to feel like I'm feeling, and here's some solutions to help me keep away from feeling like that and stay on the climb and continue to elevate my 6 inches between my ears.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and if I'm picking it up right, it's like you go through phases of learning and applying these techniques, strategies, and then digress back into
Well,
who you,
sometimes, yeah.
yeah.
But over the last 30 years, that doesn't happen anymore. But at one time
Oh,
it did,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? At one time it was a fact that I knew the solution, but I avoided the solution because sometimes that quiet desperation can set back in, or that overwhelm, or I want to fit in.
Yeah.
And I knew the answers, but because I wasn't constantly staying engaged in it to apply them, the
Mm-hmm.
different things I was learning, I'd fall backwards. But as obviously 30 years of doing it, stuff just it's habitual. It's just like when you're driving a car, got to put the brake on, right? You're coming up to a stoplight. You're going to you don't even think about it. You just put the brakes on. It's taken me longer to get to that point where everything is always consistently, critical thinking. Something happens, I respond this way to avoid
Yeah.
it, right? I put up that wall. So I was wondering, that's why the question is how do you think it affects, would you suggest people do personal development? What do you utilize yourself, or what do you suggest to people? I know for myself, that's what I've utilized, right? Obviously mentorship and coaching from certain people as well.
Yeah. So through my experience and my training, what I uh support my tribe with is 10 evidence-based ways in which we can live without chronic stress and burnout. Uh, and I can certainly get into these 10.
Sure.
Uh, how do you want to go about it? Should I highlight the 10, or should I kind of like talk about each one in order?
How long would it take you to discuss every one of them?
I would say about uh I could do a quick summary in about 10 minutes.
Go for it. Let's
Yeah.
do it. Yes. I'm interested, and I believe my listeners would be as well.
All right. So I also want to preface this, the order in which I go does not mean the order of importance
Okay. Good.
of
That's
these
good.
10. Yeah. Uh, all of these 10, in my experience, are equally as important. Again, these are all science backed, with many research studies and evidence out there. And so category number one is breathing, conscious deep breathing. And I guarantee you that the majority of us on this podcast right now are not mindful of how deep that they are breathing. The reason why this is a category is because our brain uses about 20% of our total oxygen supply. And so even mild deprivation from a breath work perspective, we're not giving the brain what it craves from an oxygen perspective. And we can experience that like haziness, that fogginess, that builds up, and that can lead to us feeling just like foggy and stressed. Uh, that's category number one. Category number two, our brain is 80% water. And so let's think about our hydration. How how much water, or simple clear water, are we drinking in a day? From a CDC perspective, there really isn't a standard to provide folks from how much water we should be drinking every day, because it's going to depend on how much physical activity we're getting, how much we're sweating, if we're in a hot climate, if we're in a cold climate. However, the guidance that I give based on a couple of pieces of feedback that I've received from nutritionists that I've worked with in the past, if we can maintain a pale yellow urine color, that would be ideal. That's going to equate to different amounts of water for different people, of course, but that pale yellow urine color is something that you might want to explore. The third category is food, nutrition. And I'm not going to get into a whole like food plan right now. That's out of my scope and out of the scope for the podcast, but just at a very high level, our guts are very intimately connected to our brains. And if we're not fueling our guts with nutritious foods, did you know 95% of our serotonin production is actually manufactured in the gut?
Wow.
And serotonin is one of our feel-good hormones. And so if we're not fueling that gut, that doesn't have an opportunity to manufacture. Plus that the vagus nerve connection to the brain, if our gut's unhealthy, like our brain's gonna be unhealthy, we're gonna and that will absolutely lead to us feeling you know, chronically stressed and burned out. Category number 4. This is a biggie. Like I said, these 10 are equally biggie, but this is a biggie because and I say that because I feel like there's the way that so many of us have been raised and conditioned, especially in our cultures, it's not always so easy to do. And that's why I say it's a biggie. And that is honoring, acknowledging what we're feeling. What are we feeling from an emotional perspective? And then how are we releasing those emotions? I always talk about the goal in this category is to create an emotional highway without traffic. Because we're always going to be emoting. We are humans and we're emotional beings. Things are always going to happen to trigger us. And generally speaking, what we have been raised and conditioned to do is bottle things up, especially the negative stuff. And over time, that's going to build until it explodes into physical stress symptoms, emotional stress symptoms. There's a whole body of science about this called mind-body syndrome. And it's this trafficless highway that I talk about all the time, because it's truly all about acknowledging what you're experiencing, acknowledging what you're feeling, honoring it because you're a human and you deserve to feel the way that you do, and then figuring out how to release it in healthy ways. And there's so many different ways in which we can do that. A lot of the times we do go to the more of the short-term fixes, which can be negative for us. You mentioned the word addiction earlier today, and when we become addicted to these more of the negative things, the smoking, the drinking, yes, in the short term, it makes us feel good, but in the long term, it's not a sustainable thing. And so releasing these emotions in healthy ways, and there's so many different ways in which we can do that. The other thing that I want to say about these 10 categories is that they apply to us all as humans, but then how we apply it into our lives is going to be very different, because we are all different and individual. And so how we might release our emotions in these healthy ways will be different from person to person. And I can get into some suggestions and tips if that's something that you want me to do later. The 5th category is sleep. I know you mentioned sleep again today. Getting that quality sleep, consistent, regular sleep is what it's all about. Again, according to the CDC recommendations, adults, we should be getting at least 7 hours of regular, consistent sleep each day. just to throw a bit of science in there, what happens during the deep cycle of our sleep, overall sleep cycle? The glymphatic system is a system that is primarily activated during the deep part of our sleep. And what that is that the glymphatic system flushes out all of the dead neurotransmitters that have accumulated during the course of the day. So during that part of the deep sleep, that glymphatic system is in action, flushing all of that out of our brains so that the next day we wake up fresh, energized, ready to go. If that doesn't have an opportunity to do its job, it's no wonder why we wake up feeling groggy, foggy, hitting the snooze button many times, because it's physiological. And again, going back to that self-compassion piece, as you're working through this chronic stress, have that self-compassion. But that's the fifth category that I talk about. Sixth category I talk about is that physical activity. It's the exercise. And the recommendation is that healthy adults and adults, defining that between 18 and 65, I'll speak to that for the purpose of this podcast, is at least 150 minutes of moderate activity, like cardio kind of activity, get that heart beating per week. Or if you're doing more vigorous activity, at least 75 minutes of that. And in addition to that, a couple of days of that weight training, resistance training, just to kind of get at the muscles in the body. I always recommend folks to kind of check into the nationally reputable organizations where they can kind of dig deeper into each of these categories. And so there are recommendations for folks in the 65 plus range as well, and folks who are pregnant. I encourage folks to explore what all of those recommendations are from those particular sites. The next category, rest, breaks, totally different from sleep. And the studies show that, so our brain, as you may know, it's not a muscle, it's an organ. And so if you are, let's just imagine that we're both running right now. Our leg muscles are going to tell us in real time, let's take a break. We're tired. Our brain doesn't do that in real time. Our brain does that when it's too late and we're just like totally exhausted. But the research is showing now that the average brain fatigues after 90 minutes of focused activity. And it could be quicker than that, depending how intense that activity that you're focused in on is. It could be longer than the 90 minutes, but on average, it's 90 minutes for the human brain to become fatigued. And if we're not monitoring that can absolutely lead to us feeling just like overwhelmed, overworked, lack of clarity, irritable, all the things. And so the recommendation is how might you be able to sprinkle in a few moments of rest or breaks. It's all about like distracting yourself from what you are doing to something else that's ideally more positive and uplifting. So maybe it's a loved one you're thinking about, maybe it's a pet that you're thinking about, anything that brings you joy. Maybe you listen to a song. And it really only takes a few minutes to distract that brain. And in addition to that research I just shared, what's also included in that is the more that we do that, the more productive and efficient we actually are on the task at hand, as opposed to kind of spending hours and hours and hours like trying to complete it because you're just so exhausted. The next category that I love talking about is this meaningful, like finding meaningful connection. When I talk about connection, I talk about three different prongs. It's connecting with other people. We're human, we're social creatures. And yes, we wanna feel connected with people who we love and trust. the second prong I highlight here is connection to your physical environment. So how comfortable, how safe, how rejuvenating do you find your home to be? Where you live geographically. Do you feel connected to the climate? Do you feel connected to the nature? Do you have access to nature? Do you want access to nature? All the things are included in that prong. And then the third prong, which is one of my favorites, is that connection to yourself. And I know we've touched upon this a lot in this episode, particularly, and that's what do I mean by connection to yourself? It's really like tuning into your value system. What's important to you? Are you making decisions that are in alignment with what's important to you? Or are you solely making decisions that are not in alignment with what's important to you? It's tuning into that negative self-talk. If that's a thing for you, and maybe you don't know that it's a thing until you do some reflection work. But it's really tuning into what am I telling myself? In moments where I feel overwhelmed, in moments where I'm just like, oh my God, like life can't be like this, right? If you're experiencing that right now, I encourage you to tune in and explore what you might be telling yourself in that subconscious level as a way to bring it to your awareness. Because with awareness comes power, with awareness comes choice, and it's 100% possible to change our mindset. It's 100% possible to create the realities that we want to create for ourselves. So those are the three prongs that I include into that connection piece. The last two that I include in my 10 is gratitude. That's a big one. Gratitude has a direct impact to alleviating that amygdala that I talked about in the beginning of this episode. And if you're in that activated stress state right now, your amygdala is likely to be expanded. And practicing a consistent moment or moments of gratitude based on the research has a direct impact to bringing that amygdala back to its original size as a way to support us living without chronic stress and burnout. And again, it doesn't take all of the time in the world to practice gratitude. It really can only take 5 minutes in a day. And I encourage people to think about, generally speaking, when people think about what they're grateful for, they do think about other people, which is amazing. If you're doing that, yes, keep doing it. But there's other topics here, and there's other areas that I talk about that may often go unnoticed, and that's maybe you have some pets and animals in your life that you're grateful for. Maybe it's the material things that you have in your life, the privileges that we have. Maybe it's the running water that we have access to. Maybe it's the bed that we get to wake up in. All of the things that sometimes we take for granted, the refrigerator that keeps our food fresh so that we can kind of keep eating. So, and maybe a new thing for you would be feeling grateful for who you are, what skills you bring to this world, what gift you bring to this world. That could be something that you might want to explore within this gratitude topic. And then the last one of the 10 is having fun. Having fun. And when we have fun, when we laugh, when we play, we're bringing down those cortisol levels, and cortisol is one of our stress hormones, and it's healthy to have cortisol, as I mentioned earlier today. We want the stress response system to be there. It's a part of us to protect us from real threats. But when we have fun, when we're active, when we do have fun, those cortisol levels will come down and ultimately lead to better outcomes for you. And so I don't know if you're into inner child work, but maybe a question that I could end this part of this episode with is what does your inner child want to do right now, and how might you be able to play and honor the play that it wants to have?
I love that. That's that you know, aren't we all children dressed in adult clothing? Right? We look back at our childhood and we dream and think to ourselves, I wish I would have had this experience in childhood. Okay, well, you're an adult. Go experience it. Right? I
Mm,
look at all the, I look at, I'll use an example of, I look at all the people now today, one or two things that make me smile. I know adults that do both. They buy these giant grown-up coloring books
mm,
and they color. And how many people would say, well, that's just for kids? No, I know adults that have, they buy these, you can buy them online. Amazon sells them and they color. That's for them
mm,
is something that soothes them, calms their brain down, keeps them focused, and they enjoy it, right? Number two, I find so many adults today, I find more adults like Lego than ever admitted it in their lifetimes. I have one of my closest friends of 30 years. He's got a room and cabinets of Lego that would blow your mind. And my brother-in-law and my sister like doing Lego. My niece and nephew and their kids, they do Lego together as a family. And
mhm,
you know what I mean? My point is anything that you wanted to do as a young person, you can still do as an adult. What's your inner child? Like Andrew said, what's your inner child want to do? You
mhm.
want to get goofy and you want to run through a sprinkler? Go for it.
Yeah,
Right? Whatever.
yeah.
Right? I love your 10 points. So like I won't target on all of them because I was thinking about something for all of them. Breathing. Well, if you have a smartwatch nowadays, depending on how advanced it is, my watch comes up and reminds me to breathe,
Mm,
tells me to be mindful, to have to stop and think, be mindful, right? Have that
mhm,
moment of clarity, revelation of your, reveal what is being revealed at that moment. What were you thinking about? And do I always listen to my watch? No. But it reminds me to stand too. That's another thing people don't do enough of. With sedentary life, we need to stand more. So my watch reminds me on the hour, stand up. And I have to stand a certain amount of time before I score as an hour of standing. Do you know what I mean? The
mhm,
mindfulness. So the reason I bring that up, for those listening, watching, there's little things that you can utilize if you have a smartwatch that'll or do that. You can even get your smartphones without a watch to do that, remind you. um why? Because those little things make a difference, right? Like you were saying, they're breathing, the mindfulness, the thinking. Like I loved how you talked about in step 9, gratitude. I practice that twice a day minimum. I
mm,
don't get out of bed without practicing gratitude. I don't go to bed at night without being grateful and practicing gratitude. Life is too short not to analyze. And that's not a harsh word, but to reflect on my day coming up, my day that's ended. And, I was thinking, I went to go to bed last night and I was thinking about today. I got up this morning and I thought about, I'd never met you, but I thought about, I'm grateful I'm going to have a great conversation today, right? I'm going to
mhm,
have a podcast. I'm going to learn some new things. My listeners are going to learn new things. Tonight, when I go to bed, I'll unpack that. I'll think about you. I'll think about our conversation. I'll be grateful for it. But I do have that gratitude about people laugh. You have gratefulness for having running water? Yeah, absolutely. I get to brush my teeth. There's lots of people in this population that can't go into a bathroom and have clean running water. I have gratitude for my bed, my pillow that supports my head. Every day I have that. And it's the
mhm,
same, and it's not corny. It's because I do appreciate the fact that I have a bed to sleep in. I appreciate the roof over my house to keep me safe from the outside elements and from outside influences that could harm me. I have gratefulness for my feet. People laugh. What? Well, without my feet, I couldn't stand. Without my legs to move forward, I couldn't get anywhere to help anybody. Without my arms, I couldn't support myself, take care of myself, and support others. So I have
mhm,
gratefulness for that. I even the odd time I don't do it as often as I should. I have gratefulness for the oxygen we breathe. Because think about the portion of oxygen we have in our atmosphere, like in our air right now,
mhm,
is way less than the nitrogen and anything else that's in the air, but it's just enough for us to survive. You should be grateful for that,
mhm,
right? Just so I like that. And then you talked about um Sleep. Oh, I talk about that with people all the time. Like I said, I just had a sleep expert on. The show is live this week. For those who are listening, you can jump back a few episodes and listen to Dr. Bajoy, but sleep is so critical. Probably one of the number one things that we take for granted is the fact that, we don't need a lot of sleep. We do. 7 hours, absolutely, and restful sleep. And I'll tell you, these tie together what Andrew's teaching you. Number 5 it ties to number 9, to gratitude. I sleep better when I'm grateful and I reflect, even if there's stuff that has gone on negative in my day. When I
Mm-hmm.
look at that negative thing and I unpack it, what can I do different? If I did something wrong, forgiving myself, appreciating the fact that I could even feel that emotion, accepting that emotion. Maybe somebody did something or said something, or I did, or it was a combination, accepting it and realizing it so that my brain doesn't have the power when I'm sleeping to not shut up and think about it and make it so that I don't have healthy sleep cycles, right? Again, I track my sleep cycles on my watch. I wear my watch when I sleep. I can tell you how I slept for the last few years. I can go back every single day and tell you, and I can wake up and know I had a lousy sleep. And my watch, when I look at my phone and look at it tells me, yes, you did.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes it's because I was too tired. I didn't have enough number 9. I didn't have enough
Mm-hmm.
gratitude and gratefulness. So owning my stuff and accepting it helps me continue to be a better person and sleep better. So I like all these. And as I was writing notes, they all tie together, honoring
Mm-hmm.
our feelings. Number 4 comes into that, honoring how we're feeling. But when we have that gratefulness, like everything you taught here in a very short 10, 15 minutes, all ties together. Those listening or watching, dial it back, listen to that part again, take notes, reach out to Andrew. Like, unbelievable. Majority of what you talk about here, I think about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's through that personal development that I got to this. It's through my podcast that I've even learned more, because that's personal development too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you just added another great, stepping stone to people's lives because you've spelt it out in a very bite-sized format. Yes, there's more details, as you mentioned, but it's
Mm-hmm.
bite-sized. If they listen to this back and just follow these 10 things, just in a minor form, you'll see a change in your life. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, yes, and yes. And 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 yeah, I love the way that you talk about how they do all interconnect, because at the end of the day they do. Like it's all connected. Uh another connection for someone could be uh if if they're not currently drinking the water that they, should be drinking today, just that tweak alone could give someone the energy to, be more active, for example.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and then all of these things, yeah, they it's kind of like a domino effect. And again, the beautiful thing is that this all applies to everyone as humans with a brain, and we all have brains. It's just, how do you then apply this information into your life? Uh, and you mentioned the watch, like it tracks and it reminds you on a lot of different things. That might work for someone, but it also might not work for someone. And so,
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
really figuring out
What
how to apply it.
figuring it out. I have people that say to me, I've recommended it to other people and they do it. And some people say, I just don't like it. Okay, that's great. So
Yeah.
what can you do
Yeah.
to be different, right? What are you willing to invest in and sacrifice in regards to your stubbornness to realize that different strokes for different folks. We're all different, like our fingerprint. We all have different fingerprints, right? Some people, the watch idea might not work, but it is an option that some people don't realize they can take, or they can use. You can even use your smartphone. If you have one, you can buy applications, have it sitting on your bed, and it literally records your sleep patterns. I did that before I ever had a watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I could hear myself talking in my sleep. Or you can find out if you're a person that snores, and why is that important. If you are a person that snores a lot, and let's say you're an individual single like myself, You could have breathing issues. You could have sleep apnea. There's so many other things. So there's different things in your life that you can utilize. I don't want people to get overwhelmed. Start with the simple things that Andrew mentioned. Start with drinking enough water. Like in Canada, I drink between 3 and 4 liters a day, which is about a gallon American of water. And
Mm-hmm.
people say, well, I'll be going to the bathroom all the time. Well, guess what? That's not bad. Your body, your cells, your health rely on water, and the toxins that come out of your body when you go bathroom are as part of your reproductive system, like it's part of your actual system, your health system, part of your digestive system. Everything is tied together. Without proper hydration and getting rid of those toxins, it sits in your body,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your brain, like Andrew said, needs a lot of water. Um, you'll use less stimulants, right? Stay away from sugar. Don't eat, like we could get into the talk for hours, because
Oh my God.
I've had
Yeah.
nutrition experts on. I've studied nutrition for the last 30 years. I don't use normal sugar. Like I'm drinking, this isn't, I only drink stuff that's not, I don't even use artificial sweeteners. This is sweetened with a natural sweetener called stevia, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like having a carbonated beverage, so I'm drinking that. I drink a ton of water, as I'm showing in the video for those watching. I drink a lot of water. I always stay hydrated. My watch makes sure and gives me crap if I haven't had enough sleep. Again,
Mm-hmm.
you may not have a watch. There's other things. I'm just telling you what I've found has worked for me. But even if you have that watch, are you willing to step out of your comfort zone and program it? Are you willing to have it be your knock knock, open the door? You didn't sleep enough. You didn't you didn't do this enough. You didn't breathe enough. You didn't stand enough. I'm just a person that's always trying to elevate. So those listening and watching, those that have been listening to the show for a long time, you understand that I'm always a work in project, trying to better myself. I have those days where it doesn't work. These 10 things aren't all going to happen. Some days it's just, it is what it is. I
Mm-hmm.
reflect, I acknowledge tomorrow is another day, and I'm going to make it so that I do more of number 6, physical activity, or I do more of number 7, rest breaks, right?
Yeah. And to that end, I do also want to just um, highlight, in addition
Sure.
to there's not one category that's more important than the other. The other thing that I do want to say that I didn't before is that there's no state of perfection here, and it's really all about
Exactly.
a state of optimization. So when you're going around these different domains, that's truly what it's all about. It's optimizing the domain or domains for your life.
Yeah, it's what an amazing conversation from where we started to where we're at.
Yeah.
But it's good, right? There, there's no right or wrong way of how this should have gone and how we should have communicated. The end result is that people have some actionable advice that they can utilize, one or all of it, to change their lives. Those 10 points, like when I look at what I wrote down, this is a roadmap for a good life,
Mm,
right? It is that simple, right? People, you get all this going on when I do life coaching with people, and we talk about, you know, oh, I do this and do that. I don't sleep well. And I ask them about their nutrition, and I'll go, what is that up? Well, because part of that, of what you're experiencing, is the monsters you've introduced into your life that are controlling you. If you're not getting enough sleeping, you're drinking energy drinks every single day. There's sugar in them. You drink the non-sugar ones. They have artificial sweeteners, which trigger your brain differently. It's all tied together. And I'm not against people drinking a coffee. I drink 1 coffee a day. I drink it in the morning. Why? Because I like it. But I'm not using it as a stimulant because I can barely keep my eyes open before I have a conversation with Andrew, for an example. If this was first thing in the morning, I do it because I enjoy it, but I also know how to regulate what I know isn't something I want too much of, right? So I
mm,
might have one of these a day, right? This naturally sweetened, naturally flavored, and it's clear. That's another thing. I look for stuff like that. If you're drinking pop, guess what? The color that the pop is isn't natural, right? These pops are all clear. They're completely clear because they don't put anything in it. It's just, you know what I mean? There's certain things we can do within our nutritional life. We can still live a purposeful, enjoyed life. We can still, if you drink alcohol, you can still do it if you're doing it in the right state of mind. You're not using it to band-aid or hide things. You could still be that person, but you're drinking it in the right sense. You're not drinking it in a depressed state. You're not drinking it in an anxiety state, in a chronic stress state. You know what I mean? So there's so many things you can do. I like that. I like how you broke that down. I really do. Thank you. That was 10 steps are very specific. You give some actionable steps. Anybody listening, start somewhere. Start by listening to that section again, taking notes. And then if you really want to gravitate to change, reach out to Andrew and go through those next steps, right? I loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Thank you so much for that. So you pretty much, like I said earlier, when we started recording and we have this conversation, you're going to pretty much cover everything. I'm looking to the rest of the things I wanted to discuss, and we discussed it already. It was great. It was great. Thank you so much. So Andrew, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Yeah, I think it's if there was one thing, it would be that self-compassion piece. The reason I say that is, again, because all of what we're experiencing like when we're actively stressed for long periods of time, and that chronic stress state, that's that burnout state. It's biological. If we're not proactively managing it, it's biological. And so from that perspective, we are human. If you're going through it right now, if you're on that hamster wheel right now, if you are down in the dumps right now, if you are feeling alone right now, if you're feeling like you don't fit in right now, yes, these 10 things, super, super powerful, but I think fundamentally is just like really having compassion for yourself, that you are here from a biological perspective, and take that with you, because now you know the power. Now you know the information that can support you in transcending where you are now to living with more of that energy and that purpose and that joy. But I don't know, and my brain just keeps going back to the self-compassion piece, because so much of it is what we tell ourselves too, and it goes back to that connection domain, connecting to ourselves, and yeah. So I know I could talk for like hours on this stuff, but that self-compassion piece is the main thing that I would leave the listeners with.
And that's perfect, because you and I are on the same page. We don't have enough compassion for ourselves, for our circumstances. The road that we've traveled on in our journey through life, we've beaten ourselves up over things, and we haven't had enough joy about the good things. We focus on the negative, right? We don't have enough compassion for what outside circumstances maybe made us perform at a certain level, whether it was enough or not enough, whether or not we, just let things interfere with our sleep, with our nutrition, with everything. And if you have a bad day or character building moment, don't beat yourself up. Have compassion and say to yourself, you know what? I'm proud of myself. I'm going to pat myself on the back. I had the realization that happened. Tomorrow's another day. I'm not going to let it happen. And tell yourself that. And if you do that enough, you're going to develop a very sharp critical thinking process, where you'll start to, and I've had experts on my show where it's literally 40, you got about 45 seconds. When that starts creeping in, you'll eventually create a mindset where it'll shut that door before it has a ability to fester. Is it going to be 100%? There's no, like you said, Andrew, there's no perfection. But what it will do is give you a more purposeful existence, a purposeful life, to appreciate the greatness of who you are. Because the more you appreciate the greatness of you, the more you can spread it to others, right? All it takes is
And
one, and that
yeah,
catalyst spreads.
and know that our brains today, they're encountering a lot more than
Oh, yeah.
our friends back during the cave people days, right? And so again, that self-compassion piece is key, because now we're in a day and age that we have to proactively manage this, or else we're going to experience more of this chronic stress and burnout. And I know it's possible for you to live without it, uh, and I'm here for you. And if, yeah, like Dwight said, if you have any questions about this, reach out, and I'd be happy to answer them.
Fantastic. So on that note, our time's up, but I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can we please tell the listeners and viewers what's the best way they can reach you?
Absolutely. So my website is www.themindblowingcoach.com. They can request a free stress relief strategy call with me. And that would be the best way for someone to reach out to me.
That's awesome. For those new to the show that are watching or listening, your best bet to find this information is go to giveaheck.com, click on the podcast part, go into it. You'll see a picture of Andrew and the show notes below. You'll be able to find out his website link will be there, plus all his social media connections, and it's just a one-stop shop, right? You'll be able to go and read up on this amazing man and the information that he has shared, and not fear. Oh my goodness, I should have wrote that down when they were talking about it. And if you're driving, don't stop. Keep on driving. Go home, go to giveaheck.com, go podcast. Oh, there's Andrew. Scroll down, you can read about the show, and you'll find the links to his website and all his social media. And I highly encourage you to, again, the ultimate. I loved our whole podcast, but the 10 things was my favorite. Partially because I'm partially excited about it because I do those 10 things.
Nice.
Some of them I can't do as much because I have health issues. So number 6, it's tough on me because I used to be very physically active, but I won't. The listeners know about my health challenges because I've had health specialists on, but majority of them, it's consistent every single day. And live a purposeful, meaningful life takes some effort. Any last words or comments you'd like to make before I wrap the show up, Andrew?
I just wanted to thank you, Dwight, for having me here and allowing me to share my story and reflect on a lot of different things as well. I'm learning and growing too, and I really appreciate the time. It sounds like you found value. I hope that your
absolutely
found value, and that's really what it's all about. It's uplifting the world.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks again for investing some time with myself and the listeners and people watching on YouTube. Comment, reach out, share this episode with other people. Comment, right? Make sure you rank and review this podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, because these algorithms share it with more people when more people interact. So thank you for the listeners and the viewers. Thank you again, Andrew. I'm going to wrap up the show now. And again, I appreciate you a lot. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Andrew. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn. It is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.